Women should remain silent in the churches. They are not allowed to speak, but must be in submission, as the law says. If they want to inquire about something, they should ask their own husbands at home. For it is disgraceful for a woman to speak in the church.
Samuel said to Saul, I am the one the Lord sent to anoint you king over his people Israel. So listen now to the message from the Lord. This is what the Lord Almighty says. I will punish the Amalekites.
Jésus, par ton sang précieux, enlève mon iniquité. Regarde-moi sur les cieux, dis-moi que tu m'as pardonné. J'ai longtemps erré cœur rebelle, mais j'entends ta voix qui m'appelle. Au pied de ta croix maintenant, tout confus, brisé, je me rends. Blanc, blanc, plus blanc que neige, blanc, plus blanc que neige, lavé dans le sang de l'agneau, je serai plus blanc que la neige.
Now go, attack the Amalekites, and totally destroy all that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys. 1 Samuel 15.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. It is my immense pleasure to welcome you to this 29th episode of God is Not White. This appointment that we have every week and every Wednesday at 7 p.m. It is my privilege, my pleasure to welcome you to this program. And like every evening, I am convinced that we are about to live an experience that will be rewarding for both sides. Now, my name is Jafri Kaiti, and I greet you from Ottawa, Gatineau, the capital of Canada. And today we're going to be talking quite a bit about Canada. And I hope that those of you who are not familiar with Canadian politics will find some of this information educational. And for those who are familiar with Canadian politics, you might also find it educational, but also do not hesitate if you find that there are things in there that you take exception to, as it is bound to happen, because we are going to be talking about some touchy subjects this evening. And it is possible that I err. It is also possible that there is a disagreement in the way I present the material and the way you would have presented it if it was you, the presenter. All right. That said, I do not favor lengthy introductions, as we have plenty to cover this evening. And I already take the time to greet two of our illustrious participants who are there week after week, Chantal Timothée and Marie-Nadine Pierre. And we encourage you guys who are just tuning in to remember to subscribe if you haven't done so already, and to share widely, even with folks who are not necessarily familiar with um, the internet in terms of using YouTube, etc. So share the YouTube link via email, share it with folks who may not be aware that this program airs every Wednesday and that it deals with the relationship that people of African descent nurture or manage, if you can call it this way instead, with Judeo Christianity. Tonight, we're going to depart from the strictly analysis of religious persuasions. Last week, we did focus a lot on that. You know, the question we were looking at was why do people of African descent who no longer identify as Christians still, you know, get buried in the Christian churches, right? With the uh, ceremonies and all of that. Anyways, so those of you who have followed this program for a while know that the PowerPoint presentation that we share with you is usually between at least under 10 slides, so it's not a lengthy presentation, and but we leave plenty of time for analysis. And this evening, in addition, we have a very brief video that I think is important to reflect upon. Okay, so the theme: Black leaders, Black leader. What God are you serving in the white man's government? Now, this is something we could ask of quote unquote Black leaders in the United States, in Canada, in England, in France, in the Australian government, in the New Zealand government, you know. And we've seen indigenous leaders, for instance, in the New Zealand parliament, give an example of what we would consider appropriate behavior for someone who's been allowed in the big house. And we do have such examples also in Canada, and this is what I will be sharing with you this evening. All right, so there is God is not very present in this edition of the program tonight. Okay, so those of you who have seen the others, you know that if you go on the website, you will see all of the previous episodes where we covered our conceptions of God and religion and the conflict between the two, and how Black people have managed to navigate this space all of these years. Tonight, the focus is on those of us who have been in the big house. You know, the concept of being in a big house. In the movie 12 Years a Slave, we see it in the character, the main character who is allowed in the big house, is even playing the violin while the butchers of his people dance and party and have a grand time, you know, eating the food that is cooked by the people, the African people who are enslaved. Um, and so the concept of what are you doing in the big house, to push the metaphor further, um, you know, the Black family that is in the White House, what is the purpose of being there? What do you do while you are in there? That's the question we're asking. And so when we put it as, what God are you serving in the white man's government, we could say, you know, what is your ethics while you are in this unethical space? And you can see in 12 Years a Slave how the main character navigated. And so tonight we will have three times, three sets of slides We will look at Frederick Douglass, and we will contrast the behavior of Frederick Douglass, the famed abolitionist, with those of Cheryll Mills. Some of you may not know who Cheryll Mills is. We'll briefly touch upon that. Brian Nichols, Colin Powell, Condoleezza Rice, Barack Obama, Michael Langley. It's not important whether you know some of these people and not others. That's the important thing here is we're talking about characters, we're talking about examples as opposed to the individuals themselves. The second set of slides will take us to Canada, and then we'll be looking at Michael Jean, the former Governor General of Canada, other MPs in the federal government, Emmanuel Dubourg, Greg Fergus, former Speaker of the House, and Célina Ceasar-Chavannes, and the Liberal Party of Canada. And for this segment, the bulk of it will be about a 6-minute video focusing on the case involving Sister Célina Ceasar-Chavannes, who was a member of parliament who had to resign, and we will see why and how, in what manner. And the third segment, final segment, is how would a Black Canadian ambassador behave among nefarious white warlord families in Haiti? You will see why this is a very timely and appropriate question to ask in the context of this episode and in the context of what we are living this specific week. Frederick Douglass, many of you are familiar with the name. You know he was an abolitionist, someone who was himself born in enslavement in the United States, managed to win his freedom, and then fight alongside many others for the abolition of racial slavery in the United States. And I must say, with some success. Harriet Tubman was someone with whom he corresponded on a regular basis, and Sister Harriet, much respect to her for the many travels that she's conducted, leading the underground railroad, putting her life at risk to save countless human beings, men, women, and children. And so, likewise, Frederick Douglass deserves our respect for all of the efforts that he's conducted, what he's written, what he's said, and the meetings that he's conducted, the risk that he's undertaken in order to push forward the cause of abolition of racial slavery in the United States. That said, the wickedness of the criminals who established the government of the United States of America, of North America, knows no limits. There's nothing so unethical that it is beyond their ability to conceive it. And so at the end of the 19th century, as it conspired to steal Haiti's Mole Saint Nicolas, which is a region in the northwest of Haiti, the US government briefly called upon the famous abolitionist Frederick Douglass to serve as US ambassador to Haiti. And you will see why we put US ambassador to Haiti in quotation marks. 2 years later, in July 1891, Douglass resigned in disgust at US policy. By his dignified behavior, Douglass taught us that whereas taming the wickedness of racist imperialists might be beyond our individual powers, behaving honorably towards one's ancestors and people remains forever sacred duty. Now, Why did we put US ambassador to Haiti in quotation marks? Well, they did not even name him US ambassador, whereas the white man who was there before him was an ambassador. But in order to not offend racist whites in the United States, they cooked up a new title for him, something like first consul and resident consul, whatever. But he was the US representative in Haiti with the highest rank. Therefore, the US ambassador representing the President of the United States in Haiti. And of course, you can understand why they considered it appropriate and beneficial to the United States to have a black man, and not any black man, but an abolitionist, famous abolitionist, representing the United States in Haiti in 1889, 1890, 1891, when he resigned in July. Barely 2 years. Now, given that Haiti is known to be the place where the Africans rose up and declared independence and the first national abolition of racial slavery in known human history. Now, that said, in 1889, the United States were not celebrating abolition when they picked Frederick Douglass to send him to Haiti. The hidden mission was that he would go to Haiti, charm the population because of his fame, because of what he stands for, in order to help the United States take over territory because they wanted to use that space for a military base. And when Frederick Douglass started the negotiations, he himself was discovering what his real mission was. And the more time was passing and he was in interaction not only with his Haitian counterparts, such as the great Antenor Firmin, the other black man you see here with the distinguished mustache and beard, the author of De l'égalité des races humaines, who debunked all of these stupid theories about superior races and inferior races in his writings at the time. Really, you could say Antenor Firmin is one of the fathers of Pan-Africanism. Brilliant man. And of course, a diplomat who was dealing with Frederick Douglass at the time. Now, this white dude who was there was supposedly, in terms of hierarchy, under Frederick Douglass, but he was undermining Frederick Douglass. So much so that Frederick Douglass got unnerved because he was telling these white people in Washington, D.C., that, well, if you're going to disrespect the Haitians, forget about having access to Mole Saint Nicola, because these people are not stupid. They understand what you're trying to do. And, why not enter a more normal relationship between the United States and Haiti? But that wasn't the goal. And so eventually, Frederick Douglass resigned. And one of his writings afterwards, he said, they accused me of being too favorable to Haiti, and I plead guilty as charged. Okay? Because he understood that um, his conscience would not allow him to play the stooge to basically cripple a nation of Africans who have already been punished since birth by the United States and the European powers. And he didn't want to play more of a role in that crime. And so I encourage you to research on the topic because it is really, really fascinating in terms of how much effort this man conducted in order to basically keep his dignity. And of course, we're talking about here Frederick Douglass at a very, very, very old age. Okay, so um, there's also taking advantage of that situation, just like they did with the aged Nelson Wolilala Mandela, right? And they couldn't stand Winnie Madikizela Mandela because Winnie was still very young and vigorous and fighting back. And so they despised her and they maligned her while throwing fake praises at Wolilala Nelson Mandela. We know the game. Okay, so now let's see, when we go from Frederick Douglass to the current players, we spoke in the past about Colin Powell. You pretty much know who Colin Powell is. Some of you may not recognize Michael Langley. This is the other black guy there who recently threatened the president of Burkina Faso because the emperor of Trumpland, Mr. Donald Trump himself, considered it inappropriate for the president of Burkina Faso to be using the gold of Burkina Faso for the benefit of the people of Burkina Faso. And so they sent this black general to threaten Ibrahim Traore, the president of Burkina Faso. This is not new. This is exactly what Colin Powell did back in 2004 when the United States, with their white cousins in Canada and France, invaded Haiti, kidnapped the president and his wife, and sent them in exile in Africa. And because they were separated from their two small daughters, they wanted to come back to the hemisphere in Jamaica so they could reunite with their two small daughters. And what did the United States do? They mobilized Colin Powell, who is of Jamaican origin, okay, so that he calls the Prime Minister of Jamaica, PJ Patterson, to threaten him, to say that the United States does not approve of you welcoming the president of Haiti, whom we have just deposed, so that he could reunite with his two small daughters. Colin Powell did that. And, we know the details of that because a brother who has joined the ancestors, the famous writer Randall Robinson, a great friend of people around the world, impoverished people, oppressed people. Randall Robinson wrote in his book the details of how shameful the behavior of Colin Powell was. But, people who followed politics in the past few decades are not surprised. Colin Powell is that fool who was fetched to the United Nations to lie, about weapons of mass destruction. They didn't care about him looking like a fool. And he didn't care because that's how he earned his stripes. He did his duty, lied, and thousands of people died in Iraq in a senseless war, so-called war, because really, this is not a war when you just go and bombard another people's civilization, when nothing has hit your own territory. In any case, what's important to understand here is that as you had this shameful behavior by Colin Powell, whom we see here with Madeleine Albright, another nefarious character, you have the Honorable Maxine Waters from the Congressional Black Caucus in the United States stating in March 2004, "I am convinced that the recent coup against Haiti involve not only André Aped, who is one of the white warlords in Haiti. We will talk about the white warlords further in the presentation, and the armed thugs, but also our own ambassador, Roger Noriega. So this is a senior member of the US Congress, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, stating that it's not only the criminals in Haiti, including the white warlords led by André Apped, who conducted this coup in Haiti, but the US ambassador was involved as well, Roger Noriega. So I put this example here to make it clear that when we talk about the importance of people who stand using the power that they have while they are inside the white man's house to do the right thing, it is not something that they do without consequences. Maxine Waters is no fool. She knows exactly what it means when she accuses the ambassador of her own country of participating in a coup in Haiti. In a coup that Colin Powell was all too happy to participate. And so we always have the choice. And some of us choose to be stooges, and some of us choose to be honorable, brave, worthy of our ancestors, worthy of our contemporaries, worthy of our descendants. Cheryll Mills is insignificant at at the present time. So is Brian Nichols. But these were Assistant Secretary of States who served under Hillary Clinton, and Brian Nichols under Joe Biden. And they continued to behave exactly just like Condoleezza Rice and Colin Powell had behaved before them. That is, whether it is Democrat or Republican, the policy of the white supremacist government of the United States, even under a so called black president like Barack Obama, doesn't change. Barack Obama, who bombed pharmacies in Africa as soon as he arrived, with his Nobel Peace Prize under his armpit. And so there are different characters, different masks for the players, but again, the end result is the same. That is, they are asked, equipped, armed to undermine Black nationhood, Black people. And Barack Obama played the game and they rewarded him. Michael Langley did, Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell, Brian Nichols, Cheryll Mills. And we saw the honorable behavior of Frederick Douglass and Congresswoman Maxine Waters. And so, as this is a theme that we think is going to occur again and again, that is the mobilization of Black bodies, whether it is as individuals or as militaries, as it is now being done in many places with African soldiers mobilized by Samuel Ruto, the puppet president of Kenya, who sent police and soldiers to Haiti at the behest of the United States government and the Canadian government as well. He also sent them to the Congo, where the Europeans are stealing the resources of the impoverished people of the Congo. And it is African soldiers from Kenya and Rwanda who are helping the Europeans conduct this crime. And so there are people who are calling on African soldiers to behave honorably. And so we issued this call a few years back in 2022, which I reiterate here. We call on all Africans, particularly Black soldiers worldwide, regardless of the national army in which they are enrolled, to categorically refuse taking part in any imperialist invasion of Haiti, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, Palestine. Our countries that resist against neocolonial slavers, insatiable terrorists, and mineral resources thieves. Because Black nationhood matters. So now I'm going to share with you the story of Sister Célina Ceasar-Chavannes. And rather than comment on it, I really will simply play the videotape, and it is not lengthy at all. So please hang on to your seat and watch.
Ceasar-Chavannes claimed victory as MP for Whitby. New to politics, full of optimism.
We're being open and transparent with Canadians.
But that optimism waned over the next 4 years, feeling marginalized, pigeonholed. Multiple clashes with the PM, some of them awkwardly public, ended with her resignation.
I'm going, so yeah.
Okay, so
I'm good.
I have just been notified by my office that Célina Ceasar-Chavannes has decided to sit as an independent.
Canadians know her as someone who doesn't mince words.
I think I'm going to call it out when I see it.
But her new memoir, Can You Hear Me Now, tells a different story. One about often falling short when it comes to speaking up. Célina Ceasar-Chavannes, Andrew here. Very nice to link up with you.
Hi, Andrew. It's such a pleasure to be on with you this evening.
I'm curious to know, what is it that you wish the Prime Minister, in your mind, had understood about you a little bit better when you formally took your place in government?
I wanted him to know that, I was smart, I was strategic, and I was able to help with policy. And I didn't want to be a token in his government. I really was fascinated with the fact that he was talking about add women, change politics, a feminist approach, and that diversity was our strength, an intersectional approach. And that really fascinated me. And I really wanted to bring that to bear in politics.
But you're saying you felt silenced, that you felt tokenized. I mean, the PMO would and has framed it very differently, right? Like the Prime Minister doesn't see it that way.
Well, it's not that I felt tokenized, Andrew. There's evidence of that. In my role with the Prime Minister, the 3 international events that I attended were the state visit to Washington, in which I only met Obama. I had no other meetings or anything else to do during that whole time. The opening of the National African American Museum in Washington, again, no other meetings, and the inauguration of President Akufo-Addo in Ghana. All 3 of those international events had a very specific focus, and it was related to my Blackness. It was embarrassing to know that I was not actually hired because I was strategic or because I had business acumen or research background. It was for my Blackness, and that I didn't appreciate.
So the frustration that you would have been feeling at this time ultimately culminates in a pretty explosive exchange over the phone between you and the Prime Minister, where you say what?
Well, the conversation was a courtesy call to tell him that I was no longer going to be running in the 2019 election. And what I had thought naively was that I was going to get the Prime Minister saying, Célina, I value your contribution. I hope that you'd run again. I didn't get any of that. What I got was, Célina, I can't have you make this announcement today because Jody Wilson-Raybould resigned today, and I can't have 2 powerful women of color leave. He went on to talk about his privilege and how people keep talking about his privilege. He went on to say that I should appreciate him. I should appreciate what he's done for me in the time that I've been in government, as if I didn't work hard. And at the end of it, at the end of his rant, I said, motherfucker, who the fuck do you think you're talking to? If he had spoken to any member of my constituency, any 130,000 member of Whitby that way, I would have had said the exact same thing, and I'd likely do it again.
Okay, okay, but I mean, that's a hell of a thing to say to the Prime Minister of the country, right?
Well, it's not just a hell of a thing to say to the Prime Minister. When the Prime Minister is speaking to me like a child, like someone that he happens to own within his government, what am I supposed to say? Am I still supposed to be polite in that context? I don't think so.
Well, let me ask you this. And this is actually something that you acknowledge almost first and foremost in the book, that in the aftermath of that phone call, where ultimately you decide that you need to leave the party and sit as an independent, virtually the very next day, you were getting calls from Black community leaders who were disappointed in a way that, that you had a seat at the table and you got up and left. I mean, what was your answer to that?
Well, sometimes as I said in the book as well, sometimes the bravest thing that you can do, the best thing that you can do is to leave, especially when you know that what is happening at the table doesn't serve you. And I knew that what was happening with myself and the Prime Minister did no longer serve me. It no longer served the constituents of Whitby.
I'm curious also, though, to know, when you look at what's happened since your departure, I mean, the world's a busy place, right? And even if we just look at the pandemic, I mean, disproportionately affects Black people, Black women, Black students, Black businesses. Do you look at what's happened since and, I don't know, like think to yourself, gosh, I wish I was there, or there was some way for me to be there so that I could have the influence today, or that I could offer my perspective today?
I think this is less about me being at that table and more about the fact that the government of today is doing a lot of performing, a lot of saying that they're going to do things, a lot of writing things down that, we need to dismantle systemic racism, but not actually doing the job.
Yeah, and consistently, though, you have advocated for other Black women and Black men, for that matter, to get involved, right? To engage in that political process and even to run themselves. I still wonder, what will they take away, do you think, or do you hope, from your experience in Parliament?
I'm very candid about my story because I don't want people to be surprised, because I want them to know that that these tensions exist, that the racism that I experience, that sexism exists there, that discriminatory practices still exist. Now, is it an indictment on the whole institution? No, it's an opportunity to do better.
Célina Ceasar-Chavannes, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I appreciate it. Thank you to your viewers.
It never ceases to, impress me how the sister spoke with eloquence and without sugarcoating any of what happened, understanding that no, she's not the one to be blamed for this, altercation, because she was treated like a child by the Prime Minister, and therefore lack of respect on this side calls for lack of respect on the other side. Now, that said, I think we can see how the role assigned to Black leaders in the white man's government is often predetermined to be decorative. Okay, at the same time that Sister Célina Ceasar-Chavannes left the government, two other women left. And it so happens that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who was leader of the Liberal Party at the time, was always promoting himself as a feminist. And even in Canadian foreign policy, the term, a feminist foreign policy became, equivalent of, at the time of the missionaries, claiming that they're bringing Jesus to the heathen. Okay, well, now Canadian foreign policy is about bringing, feminism ethics, the rights of women to Africa, dark Africa, and all of these things. As if everybody's stupid. We don't understand that Africa is a mineral-rich continent and that there are Canadian mining companies that are notorious for being thieves who want to go and steal. And that this is the real mission. And what I and others have been saying for many years now is that we need to leave this paradigm. This is just stupid and barbaric. we need to become smarter in our behavior. Why can't the people of Nigeria have access to their petroleum? Why can't the gold of Niger, the uranium of Niger, serve the people of Niger, Burkina Faso, and etc.? And yes, Canadian companies can do business, but honorably. You don't need a government to go there and mobilize force and conduct a coup to put a puppet in power so that you can, siphon all of the resources of Africa. This is not going to be accepted. It's not going to be accepted by the Africans in Africa. It's not going to be accepted by the Africans in Canada over our dead bodies. No, the job that you offered us is not sufficient for betrayal. We will not betray our people. It's a different time. Wake up. That's what we've been saying. And it's not like it's rocket science. We're talking about something that is so simple, so evident. It is unnerving that it is taking so much effort to translate into policy. And so when this altercation became very viral in 2021, it inspired me to write to Haitian politicians, Canadian politicians of Haitian origin, such as France Benjamin, who is in Quebec, Emmanuel Dubout, also in Montreal, but with the federal. France Benjamin is with the provincial. And Greg Fergus, who is my actual MP in Gatineau, Dominique Anglade, former leader of the Provincial Liberal Party, and Michael Jean, former Governor General of Canada, saying, our brave, beautiful, and powerful sister expressed in this brief interview all that ever needed to be said about what you are living day in, day out, along with thousands of us who are less visible to the general public. You know she is 100% correct. Now let us see how this translates into the specific field of Canadian foreign policy towards Black and Indigenous-led nations, Haiti, Venezuela, Congo, Bolivia, Ivory Coast, for all of the reasons we discussed earlier. Well, it is not because you serve in the government and that you have not rocked the boat, so to speak, that they're going to treat you properly. Nah. Look what happened with our Speaker of the House, Brother Greg Fergus, who became Speaker of the House and in December 2023 was, attacked in such a manner that was so evident that, in fact, the guy was not even in the position. They gave him the post because someone else got caught in corruption. And then he walked in. And now, of course, a group of Canadians wrote angrily about that. We take 2 steps forward and 5 steps back. Operation Black Vote Canada says racialized Canadians are fed up with pattern of mistreatment and expulsion of their leaders. Because indeed, many experienced Canadian bureaucrats got fed up. Some of us retired early, others sued the government, and others simply suffered in silence. And so the question is, why do so many Blacks tolerate racism with a smile in Canada? And at the time, I was commenting that this is also a result of our community not demanding more than mere visible presence. Pito nou led nou la. Being at the table is better than not being there at all. Like, what are you talking about? Our ancestors were at the table as well. And sometimes we were on the table being served. I am a resident of Gatineau who happens to be proud of my MP, Greg Fergus. He's still my MP, due to his impressive track record. Yeah, not because he's a Black guy And in fact, I remember once I told him that, you're giving me a hard time because you're forcing me to vote for the party that I don't want to vote for. Like I said, I admitted to him how tired I am to see the Liberal Party of Canada constantly take Black Canadians for granted, ignoring our long expressed just grievances on the national front as well as matters pertaining to foreign policy. Yes, I applaud those who recently on the national front took serious steps forcing action on anti-Black racism in the public service. There's something called blackclassaction.ca. You can go in there and you'll see a number of Black Canadians who serve in the public service who are suing the Canadian government because of so many people who were supposed to find promotions, etc., and who got this racism with a smile treatment. And I think this is a worthy cause. These are important steps which will surely help our children and theirs experience a better Canada. Yes, Black nationhood matters. And many of us are simply going to just leave Canada and as the racists usually call for us to go back to Africa. Well, yeah, we are actually going to Africa, but not back. We're going there because it is pleasant to be among our people, and Africa needs us, and we need Africa, but not because you're pushing our back. Because, in fact, if we were to go to Africa on such terms, we would go along with you and dump you somewhere in Europe before we take the plane and go home to Africa because we didn't come here on the love boat, as you know. All right. That said, let us get to the final segment here. Yes, and I saw this posting about the Canadian government that was doing a public consultation to know how to go ahead in terms of the future in their foreign policy towards countries on the African continent. Yes, I wish I could approach this announcement with an enthusiasm. You know the word I'm trying to say. Brilliant Black Canadian bureaucrats must finally find opportunities to apply their talents, knowledge, connections, the multiple languages that they speak to make Canada and the world much better places. But alas, I don't trust these consultations. I worked in the government, I know what consultations mean. Fixing Canadian policies towards African nations is a huge and urgent challenge. Events unfolding in Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, Ethiopia, Kenya, all around the world tell us quite clearly that business as usual will not cut it. The neo-colonial disorder must be abandoned very quickly. If the system was not willing to pay attention to what Member of Parliament Ceasar-Chavannes Célina was offering, will it wisen up and listen to other Black Canadians? So far, I haven't seen the positive signs. But still here, have not despaired yet. Let's get to the final segment. Yes, there are many Canadians I know who are brilliant, who are currently serving in the Canadian Foreign Service. Some of them have even served as ambassadors. But I don't think I've ever seen a Black Canadian ambassador in a Black majority country, whether it is in Haiti or on the African continent. And there are some disturbing reasons for that. For instance, the question we ask here: how would a Black Canadian ambassador behave among nefarious white warlord families in Haiti? Yes, this is something that Haitians, especially intellectual Haitians, often find too shameful to admit or speak about. Haiti is controlled by a handful of white criminal families. You'll see the Haitian president look like the Haitian population, but don't let that fool you. This is a picture here on the right, a set of pictures during a Zoom meeting in 2002, where the US Assistant Secretary of State, Brian Nichols, whom we mentioned earlier, went to Haiti basically to, lay the law of the land, to tell everybody what's going to happen, because it's the US that's been running the place since 2004. And his meeting with the Haitian private sector. Yeah, this is the Haitian private sector, kid you not. All of these pale faces that you see here, that's the Haitian private sector. These are members of the Haitian private sector. You can look at it in the banks, you can look at it in the import export, it's the same faces. How did that happen? It happened because there is apartheid established in Haiti, and it is apartheid just like the apartheid in Azania, South Africa. It is supported, helped, sustained by their white cousins in Washington, D.C., in Ottawa, in Paris, in other capital cities, with things like the core group, a set of white people who make decisions for what happens in Haiti since the coup in 2004. Yeah, you don't have to take what I say here for granted, but I encourage you to research it as you challenge it. The problem is, we are not talking about this because Haiti is a country where 99% of the people are black and the private sector of millionaires are all white. That's not the problem. The problem is many of them have been caught engaged in criminal activity and they never get punished. And so, when earlier last week on Thursday, it was announced that in Miami, the US government arrested Reginald Boulos, who is one of the most and famous white warlords in Haiti. Again, the term white is used in this context because of contrast. These guys are from Lebanon, they're from Syria, but the role that they've been assigned by the US government is fifth column. So they infiltrate the Haitian society and they control the economy, with the US being their protector and also their boss. Again, there are a few people who have written about that, and I am one of them. If you go on my website, jafricahaiti.com, or just Google the term white warlord that I termed a few years back in order to shockingly make the statement, you will see some of the backgrounds of these individuals. Suffice it to say that Reginald Boulos was arrested. He was actually born in New York, but they arrested him on the pretext for the initial arrest was that he had lied on his immigration status in the U.S. because he wanted to become president of Haiti, and in order to do that, he had to relinquish his U.S. citizenship in order to take on Haitian citizenship. He didn't win the presidency, but still, now he wants to reside in the United States. And in the period of Trump wanting to make a statement that no, he's not just arresting and deporting black and brown people. Well, he found this guy quite an appropriate one to make his case. However, let us not be fooled by these situations, because it is definitely much more complex than that. Like I said, if you were to have a black Canadian name Canadian ambassador to Port-au-Prince, the capital of Haiti, this person would find themselves in some very uncomfortable situations. As I've described in many of my writings, there is a community, an apartheid-like community up the mountains of Pétionville, the community that's above the capital city of Port-au-Prince, where essentially it's a ghetto of white people, or white-looking people, or white-passing people. And so that's where the ambassadors of the United States, Canada, etc., that's where they live, that's their residence, and that's also where the infamous white warlords, those faces that you see here, many of these folks are on the list of people who are sanctioned for funding the terrorists that you see in the streets, wearing sandals and carrying $7,000 a piece weapons, killing other Black Haitians. And some of us have been writing about how this was documented for years. And the game that they're playing with the Haitian population is to say that, well, Canada has put their name on the list of sanctioned people. They cannot trade, they cannot do travel. So people who are engaging in kidnappings, in coups, in murders, you put their name on the list. That's what we would have done if it was children being killed in the streets of Montreal? No. And so we've been calling all along that these people need to be arrested, their assets nationalized so that the state can take control of the ports, the private ports that, for instance, Gilbert Bidjot has been using to siphon illegal weapons as he uses the diplomatic immunity as the ambassador, the consul of Israel in Haiti, so that his luggage is not checked, etc. That's what needs to stop. Brother Yves Engler and Anthony Fenton, when they published Canada in Haiti, waging war on the poor majority that is resisting the white warlord criminals, tells us what the conundrum is. A Black Canadian ambassador in Haiti would find himself in the situation that Brian Nichols was at that meeting, surrounded by the people who are very much at the heart of crime in Haiti, whether it is drug running with the Manzanares involving Marc-Antoine Accra and Xavier Accra, Michel Martelly. But the American is the Black guy here, okay? That's the American. The others are Haitian. That's the Haitian private sector. This cannot be sustained. Essentially, that's what we're saying. I hope tonight's presentation was useful, educational. Please comment. I will struggle to make some comments as the days come by. Of course, I was talking mainly about Haiti today, but many of the things that we're talking about here are happening in other places in the Caribbean. There are Jamaican brothers and sisters who say that there are beaches in Jamaica where the natives cannot go. It's reserved, for the tourist, and we know who the tourists are. This is not sustainable. This is not acceptable. Whether you are Black or so-called white or whatever, it is your duty to join those of us who are fighting for a much better world. I thank you for having taken the time, and I wish you courage and happiness in doing the right thing.
Women should remain silent in the churches. They are not allowed to speak, but must be in submission, as the law says. If they want to inquire about something, they should ask their own husbands at home. For it is disgraceful for a woman to speak in the church.
Samuel said to Saul, I am the one the Lord sent to anoint you king over his people Israel. So listen now to the message from the Lord. This is what the Lord Almighty says. I will punish the Amalekites.
Jésus, par ton sang précieux, enlève mon iniquité. Regarde-moi sur les cieux, dis-moi que tu m'as pardonné. J'ai longtemps erré cœur rebelle, mais j'entends ta voix qui m'appelle. Au pied de ta croix maintenant, tout confus, brisé, je me rends. Blanc, blanc, plus blanc que neige, blanc, blanc, plus blanc que neige, lavé dans le sang de l'agneau, je serai plus blanc que la neige.
Now go, attack the Amalekites, and totally destroy all that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys. 1 Samuel 15.